Okay, so here's just another way to kind of analyze this problem. So as Kendall pointed out and Jonathan pointed out, we need to solve for the ratio R. And so we know that the starting value, 5/2, represents A2, as they told us, right? They said A2 was 5/2. A5 would be 3 time units or 3 iterations past A2. And so we know we have to apply the ratio 3 times. And the ratio is a multiplier. So we multiply, multiply, multiply. So when you multiply by R again, multiply by R again to move from A2 to A5, that means we're using exponents. When you multiply over and over again, that's an exponent. And so I need 3 multiplications by R, which means power 3 on the R. And so as Jonathan correctly pointed out, we can solve for the R. We have to get rid of this 5/2. So multiply by 2 and then divide by 5. And we get an 8. Once we get rid of that 5/2 on the right, we end up with an 8 on the left. And then to get rid of the third power, we use 1/3 power. 1/3 power is the same thing as third root. Third root and third power are inverses. They essentially cancel each other out, as Jonathan correctly points out over here. And so we end up with the ratio of 2. So now the question is, what's a fast way to generate the 10th term? So a fast way to do it actually is in your calculator. What I can do is just go to y equals, clear out any function I have in there, and let's put in the formula that we found. So the formula that we found essentially is right here. Essentially, the ratio is 2. And so we end up with the formula. Let's see, I guess, did we write out the formula here? But anyway, the formula, the ratio is 2. So we know the formula is going to be the starting value, or at least the value that we know, which is 5/2. So I'll put this in parentheses. 5/2, that's the value that they gave me to begin with, times the ratio. And I'll put the ratio in parentheses also just to be kind of cautious here, just to make everything grouped together. And that ratio is good. We're going to keep multiplying over and over again by that ratio. And so that means we can do that with exponents. So I'm going to let the exponent vary. Okay, and use the right arrow to get out of the exponent so you don't accidentally keep typing into the exponent. Okay, so essentially when x represents essentially how many terms past the second term. So remember, 5/2 is already your second term. So when x is 0, that means you're already at the second term. When x is 1, you're at the third term. When x is 2, you'll be at the fourth term, etc. And that's because they told us that 5/2 was the second term. So again, x is just going to represent how many terms past the given term, meaning the second term that we're at. So to get to A5, the x would be 3, etc. Now a fast way to get your values is just make a table. Second function, and right above graph is table. And there we go. Okay, so when x is 0, that means we're at the second term, which is 5/2, or 2.5. When x is 3, we're at the fifth term. Remember, x represents how many terms past this second term we're at. When we're 3 terms past the second term, then we're at the fifth term. The fifth term is indeed 20, as they told us, right? So we can check that we have the correct formula typed in, because it matches up this data. And then they want to know what the 10th term is, A10. So to find the 10th term, that means we have to move 8 terms beyond the second term. So I'm just going to look for the 8th row, and boom, there it is, 640, all done. Okay, finished. Now, if for some reason your table doesn't look like this table, if you try it and the table looks different, that means at some point someone, either yourself or someone else using your calculator, reset your table settings. So just to make sure the table settings are normal, you can go to second function, table set, right above window, start your table at 0. The table start should typically be 0. And the delta table, meaning how much x changes row by row, should be 1. And then both of these, the independent is the x and the dependent is the outputs or the y's. Those should both be on automatic so that the calculator does the work for you. You don't have to type in any particular values. So 0 for start, 1 for delta table, auto, that's your standard table settings. And then just to make the table, there you go, there's your table. And again, once again, if I want to go to A10, that means I'm going to go 8 units beyond A2. So I just look for 8 in my table, and boom, I got my answer. Okay, real fast. All right, it's handy. It's good to just get to know these calculator skills as well.